Hello everyone and welcome to What Culture. My name is Jules Gill and I'm joined by the only man who I will let terminate my insides outwards. It is Scott Tailford.
I don't know if that's good, but hi, yes, good day.
And we are together today for one explicit purpose. No, not to be absolutely silly for you lovely people, but actually to talk about something slightly serious. Now, Scott and I love the Terminator franchise.
Yes.
And basically what I'm really saying is we love Terminator 1 and we absolutely adore Terminator 2.
You speak for yourself. I love all the big dumb stuff. As a Metal Gear fan, as a Yakuza fan, give me big dumb stupid laws and I'll get lost in them. I'm a big fan.
You're making me do my Max Payne face,
That's
mate.
fine. Everyone's got a Max Payne face for things like this. I like it.
The franchise severely dropped off the map
Oh, yes.
around the third one.
Don't get me wrong, they're not good.
No.
But I'll have fun with them.
And Terminator Salvation tried to come back and do this whole sort of like, hey, we're rebooting the franchise. Then they came back with Terminator Giant Ice, and they tried to reboot the franchise again. And now they're trying to reboot the franchise yet again with, what's it called again, the new one?
DarkFate.
DarkFate. But unfortunately, this has suffered a fate worse than death, because according to new reports, this new film is on track to
doing very well.
absolutely tank. So what we're going to do today is explain why it's happened. Because in all honesty, I thought that this looked to be one of the more promising new Terminator films. So I don't understand why it's doing so badly.
I'll totally say that as a side note, I think it's totally fine. I think the first half is enjoyable enough, and then it just doubles down on itself in the second half. There's some stupid stuff in regards to what they do with Arnie in the Terminator,
Right.
and everything else. But that's all kind of besides the point. The newest information that's come out is from Variety, who are reporting that looking at the statistics, the global box office as it is right now, DarkFate is on track to lose $100 million, which is a ludicrous amount of money. So I can break down some of these statistical stuff, and then we'll get to the reasons why it bombed.
Sure.
But yeah, so like it's on track for this $100 million loss. Basically, the budget for DarkFate was between $185 and $196 million, and then you add on another $80 to $100 million for distribution and marketing fees.
Right. Okay.
So according to Variety's experts, or the people that they've polled, it would have needed to make around $450 million to break even. So not directly plus this plus that, but that's apparently what it needed to bring back in.
That's an awful lot of money. So the production costs of that are extraordinarily high.
Yeah, and the thing is though, it sounds like an absolute ton of money. Giant Ice Ice had a budget, had a box office take of around $445 million anyway.
Oh, so they have a projected reason to say that the next one would make around the same amount.
Yeah, in theory.
It's literally why the Transformers films operated. They operated on the exact basis of, we don't even need a story.
Yep.
We just need to know that it will make exactly the same amount of money as what we did last time.
But yeah, so in terms of DarkFate's global box office right now, it's taken $29 million in North America, which like again, versus the 400-ish that they needed to make, pretty bad. Its global take is $102 million with $28 million in China. Now the China statistic is interesting because the reason that Genesis, like I said, had that overall take of 445 is because that movie absolutely slapped over in China.
Really?
Yes, that thing, the reason that Genesis was initially sort of labeled, like you said, a bit of a bomb, a bit of a, didn't do very well. Genesis take in North America back in whenever the hell it came out.
2016, I want to say.
16 was 89.7 million, which again isn't very good. It sounds like a lot, but it's not very good compared to what they needed. But in China, it brought in 112.8 million in China, with 350.8 million worldwide. So that movie was very much saved over in China.
How?
Well, the thing is, like, China's got this whole thing with this sort of burgeoning middle class, this sort of emergence of this, sort of middle class audience that want, like, they're getting more introduced to like newer types of movies, and for a lot of that, like I said, burgeoning middle class, Terminator was their first example of, or first experience of a movie like this big budget, robot sort of focused sci-fi thing, and it seems to really go. It went down really well in terms of what Genesis was.
Okay.
But that hasn't happened again, and DarkFate, like I said, hasn't brought in anywhere near as much money this time around.
Because that common expression, once burnt, you know what I mean? Like if you go there and be like, ooh, this looks like a really good thing. Oh, it's absolutely ball bag.
It is a little bit, and so I think that to ground it, I think that Genesis should have been the end of the franchise. That was a really weird half reboot thing anyway, where they had like another version of Sarah Connor from the future, went back into the past and sort of sent another Terminator back, and then Arnold Schwarzenegger was like the dad of Sarah. Whatever, it doesn't matter.
And that explains why the design was based on him, even though they've already explained why the design was based on him in different ones, and then it had Emilia Clarke in, and it made no sense, and then they had all of this stupid thing.
And everyone says, "Come with me if you want to live," and whatever. And so, like, the whole thing with Genesis always felt like a bit of a mess anyway. Like we said, it didn't do very well in America. It did do very well in China, and so I think if they then went back and looked at the statistics, they can greenlight another movie. But it feels like they greenlit another movie, gambling that the worldwide box office, especially China, would make the return if it bombed again in America, and it hasn't.
But that makes that's like business studies 101. If you look at something and you go, oh look, we had an unprecedented income in this one area. That's great. Well, maybe they should have targeted that entire thing to focus on China then. They shouldn't have gone for like the North American box office release thing. They should have focused and like group tested with them, because clearly that was a market that was willing to watch what they put out.
So that's like that. My first main reason to sort of break down is that I think they have a lot of reliance on the global market, the Chinese market, and as is well established, Terminator is not what it used to be in the West.
No.
I mean, especially since Salvation notably had the whole Christian Bale meltdown. Even Terminator 3 for me was when I started being like, okay, they're not very well made movies anymore. And it's like, America was not going to respond, or the West was not going to respond very well to another Terminator film. And then you have on top of that all the other stuff that we're going to get into in regards to Linda Hamilton and timeline reboots and whatever.
The thing that, for me, when I look at the Terminator franchise and its current sort of like pop culture relevance, I look at it in terms of how it's presented in other media. Like, we had the WWE tie-in, we had the Mortal Kombat tie-in as well. And you look at them and you go, for some reason you stand out as being really old and stilted. Like, I love the first two films, possibly some of the favourite films I've ever seen. Yeah. But I look at the Arnold Schwarzenegger in Mortal Kombat 11 now, and I'm just kind of like,
it's like, yeah.
It doesn't. It seems like we've moved on from this.
Yeah,
now.
And it's just like I said, I love big dumb stupid fiction. I like the Terminator lore. I like that there's 3 timelines in this whole thing.
I don't.
And things can leap over and cross over. No. I don't like that.
No, I don't like that.
And that's fine. But I think that that's the thing though. Like, we can get onto that as well. The fact that they've had so many reboots and reworks, and the average person doesn't know because Terminator doesn't have a through line solid timeline. It has 3, and like Genesis is its own separate thing. And for this one, it was like, it's returning to T2, and it's going to be the sequel to Terminator 2 that we never got.
Which actually hooked me.
Which is a nice idea. Okay. But you haven't seen it. Like, I think
because I've got no interest in seeing.
Well, that speaks for the majority. I think a lot of people were like, that's kind of cool. You're going back to T2. They're bringing Linda Hamilton back. I mean, these are all separate points. I think it's an issue with saying that it's not a very good move to do towards the general public to say, hey, look, we're wiping out the last 3 movies to be like Terminator 3, Salvation, and Genesis all don't matter, and we're going to go back to Terminator 2, which was on this planet before most of the youth that they're trying to hook in with a new movie anyway.
That's a really good point, actually. It's like they're trading on nostalgia for a new generation that might not even be aware of it. So it's kind of like they might just sit there going like, okay, who are these old? Like, what's going on?
And plus as well, this isn't going to be an overall spoiler video, but from the opening 5 minutes of that movie, actually I don't need to go into spoilers, but they very heavily trade on nostalgia. They open that film with a clip from Terminator 2, and they've de-aged Linda Hamilton and Edward Furlong to show you another scene from just after T2. What happens in that scene is the most middle finger to the fans of T2 and the timeline as it's established, let's say. To just stay away from spoilers. But even then, even if they're trading on that stuff, a lot of critics came out of that being like, well, what the hell was the point of returning to T2 if you're then going to shake it up that much? To keep it vague.
Okay.
But yeah, so you've kind of got this idea that you're wiping out previous movies, you're wiping out previous investment, and the timeline as a separate point is a massive mess.
Oh, it's a convoluted mess. The Legend of Zelda timeline looks more coherent than that.
How dare you? How dare you, Jules Gill? Just because we've got 7 timelines, all right? Hero of Time, Hero of Wind, whatever it is. But in Terminator's case, I think the timeline thing is a big problem. Linda Hamilton as well. As much as I love Linda Hamilton, I don't think she's anywhere near as big a figure as someone like Jamie Lee Curtis returning to Halloween.
Well, she stepped out of the spotlight for so long, and she wasn't really doing much on-screen personality work. No. So it's hard to see her as a bankable star. It's all about Arnie, literally. And no offense, Arnie's getting on a bit now.
And he's an old dude. And it's like, and the rest of the movie they hang on Mackenzie Davis, who is like the new like augmented human. She does a lot of the Terminator style action in the movie. Great action. I love Mackenzie Davis in everything. Go watch *Halt and Catch Fire*. *Halt and Catch Fire*. Mackenzie Davis is great, but I think that they didn't do a good job of separating like who you're going to see. Like, is there this like latent Linda Hamilton fandom that have been waiting for a new movie? Like, no one was really clamoring to ask for Linda Hamilton to come back. And then the way that they sort of like put her into the canon, the way that they extend the T2 timeline to be like, okay, this is what she's been doing for the last 20 years. The more you think about it, the more it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. And things like that. And then, like I said, alongside that, you've got what they do with Arnie. The role that they give him is just ludicrous. It's very much played for banter. It doesn't really work.
And that's fine. That is absolutely fine. But unfortunately, you're trading in the wrong places, like you're saying before. It's like they haven't gauged the target audience in terms of their geographical like market. They haven't gauged it in their terms of the age bracket who's going to be interested in watching this. They haven't marketed it in the right way, because I know that the trailers are incredibly misleading from what I've been told about it, where it overstates how long people are going to be in the film and what their job role is versus how much it's actually focused on basically new stars and things like that.
And like another thing, which is the problem with Genesis, is that they give away way too much in the trailers as well. Like there's some sort of misguided stuff that I think almost works in its favor based on the way the story does go, but also they reveal lots of big moments, like the first time Sarah Connor sees the Terminator again. Things like that. Things that they quote unquote had to put in the trailer. But it's it didn't. It's a big moment in the film, and it would have landed better if you didn't know what she was going to say or how she was going to react. So there's things like that. The last big point is James Cameron, because obviously T2, it's very much regarded as like what he took Alien, did Aliens, took Terminator, did Terminator 2, and like with this, it was like the big return of James Cameron alongside Linda Hamilton. James Cameron has almost nothing to do with the actual through line narrative or the story of this stuff. He didn't direct it. Tim Miller did, and he didn't write it. It was actually written by a handful of people: David Goyer, Justin Rhodes, and Billy Ray.
So he was just on like an assistant producer.
So he's on as a producer.
Yeah, he's just kind of like, yep.
Exactly, he's putting the thumbs up. He's on as a producer and he's down. It just says that story by James Cameron, which can be vague as hell. Can just be like, well, he had an idea 20 years ago and he put his thumb up to it. Yeah, run with that.
All I'm thinking of is just the Terminator going down into the lava now. That's James Cameron just like, yep, that's good, brother, bye.
That's just the franchise now, just sort of like trying to make good. But yeah, so as much as if you were going for James Cameron, you don't really get him either. And it's weird, like, you add all these different things up, like the timeline being a mess, the idea that you have to forget the previous movies, the lack of communication to say like why you should even care about T2's timeline over Genesis's timeline or T3's timeline. It's just a mess.
What it seems to be is a film that unfortunately has been dropped at the wrong time. I feel like if this is executed in place of Giant Ice, maybe those couple of years ago, we might have had a bigger stock and a bigger investment going into it, because it feels like that would have been a better thing. But what we've had here is basically we've gone 3 films and then we've gone restart, then we've gone restart, and now we've gone a continuation to a film over here that's like trying to connect that. But you might not know about that one, even though it is technically the best one.
T2?
T2 is definitely the best one.
Oh, I'll take the first one.
Cool, right, well.
First one is better than T2.
That's fine, it's fine. I'm sure that there's a timeline where you agree with me.
Oh, is it? There is in the Terminator.
But there we go. I mean, like, those are like so many different reasons as to why DarkFate is just on track to not succeed. And it's a real shame in a way, because it's a great idea and it's a great franchise, but it just potentially sometimes you just get that thing where it's like lightning in a bottle can make a film explode into the minds of the public. The same thing can happen when you have technically the right elements, but for some reason it just doesn't land.
I think that one of the biggest problems, and I've seen a lot of critics say this now, is that Terminator should never have been more than one film. Hold on, I know you're a T2 fan, but even T2 is very much a repeat of the first one in terms of it being formulaic. In terms of, I love T2. My point is that at some point Terminator is just someone gets sent back into the past, someone else gets sent back into the past. They fight a little bit, and the timeline maintains, or it changes forever. It's always the same 2 things. Like, it's always the rule of 2, to borrow a term from Star Wars. And there's always 2 people coming back.
That's fine.
It's fine enough. It's not that fine, because if you keep doing it, then over time people are going to get sick of it. And even DarkFate, for as much as I love someone like Mackenzie Davis having a big old fight with Gabriel Luna, like, it's the same thing again. It's it's a superpowered heroic character fighting another Terminator from the future, defending the future, and it's the same thing over and over again. The one time they tried to change it up was Salvation, where they set a whole movie in the future. And I love the concept of that, but obviously they didn't nail it.
It was just so boring.
It was so boring, and it was so dragged out. But yeah, it's just like at some point maybe the Terminator fiction is just done, like, and just let it rest. Let it be these amazing. If you want to have 2 movies, fine. I mean, I do. And but that's the whole thing. Even the shift from Terminator 1 to 2, totally they're so different. Like, 1 is this big horror thriller thing. 2 is this buddy fun thing with Edward Furlong.
We're starting to experience this with a few franchises where they've told all of their stories, and the problem is that the more stories that they try to tell, the less actual investment that we have in the universe. They think that, because by connecting this character to this event and this, that it'll make you appreciate it more. It doesn't. It removes the mystery of what cinema is. Sometimes it is better to not know. It's the whole reason why horror is so successful. The moment you know what's chasing you around the corner, it is less scary than the unknown of the thing that's preying on you.
Yeah, the scene in It Follows where it finally catches up to them. Yeah. I broke that movie for me, but at the beginning.
But it's the same with the Terminator. It's basically just a case of like, okay, we've seen it all, we've done it all, now we're going into almost hyperbole, where it's ramping itself up to like banter territory, which is such a common phrase nowadays that it's become its own sort of genre of cinema. But it's sad to see a franchise that took itself seriously enough to be credible, like in Terminator 1 and 2, fall to this sense where it's like, well, hey, we're
and then
having a laugh, bro.
Yeah, and then like even the timeline as it stands right now, which is just like an overall point, if the people who do go and see it, there's a lot of people who are going to come out of, even like I said, even in that opening few minutes, I kind of just took it as like daring, and it made me just think like, okay, well, I don't know what's going to happen from here on in. But they do something so fundamental with one of the fundamental characters of Terminator fiction, that if you then continue in this timeline, it's then irrevocably completely changed, and everything else that you saw until this point never even happened.
Aww.
So it's they're doing even more. Let's just discard everything stuff, and you can file it under bold if you want, which I tried to, but then it is a mess, isn't it? I mean, I'm trying to defend it.
No,
and
no,
I
no,
even
no,
like
no.
Terminator.
That's fine. You don't need to defend it because at the end of the day, the people will speak with their wallets.
Yes.
And it will
or the
just
YouTube comments.
But it would just be a shame if this is the last that we get to see of the Terminator because it does have potential. It's just it hasn't potentially been realised.
I don't know. I don't know if you'd have the same feeling I would if you'd seen DarkFate. I wonder if it should just be done. Just sit in the ground, you know?
Well, speaking of being done and in the ground, that is why DarkFate is on track to be losing $100 million. Let us know what you thought about it down in the comments section below. Are you happy that this has happened, so at least it's done and dusted, or are you very, very worried that this is just going to be the end of the Terminator and we're not going to see anything else in the future in any timeline? If you want to go follow me on one of this Earth's timelines, you can do so at RetroJ0 over on Twitter, and you can follow Scott at...
You can follow me at /LP89. Do it now.
Oh, that's really good.
I could not resist.